Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, for more episodes and content. And, of course, follow along, check out the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. What a great show for you guys today. I was really psyched to have today's guest, someone I've wanted to talk to for a while, has a really good insight into the space around, especially activating around talent in the sports entertainment space. So, your hosts, your sports center anchors. He talks about his time at ESPN. Now, my guest today, I'm going to give you his name, is Brendan Kaminsky. He is the founder and owner of Be Known, an agency that works with talent, particularly in sports entertainment, with a specialty. But really, you'll see his insights go across the board, across industries. He talks about some insights into that industry, as well as his time at ESPN. And we just get into some great stuff. But before we get to my interview with Brendan, wanted to open today's show talking about how the various sports teams and leagues have spoken up again after a terrible gun tragedy in Uvalde, Texas. And Brendan and I do get into that around what it's like for folks like SportsCenter anchors or people on TV to state their opinion, to put thoughts out there. And in the case of this tragedy, it's hard not to have any thought except that you find it abhorrent and a terrible thing, and call for change, of course, as well. Brendan gives a good insight into that, but I think it's really cool and great to see teams and athletes and leagues use their platform to hopefully affect change once and for all and reduce those kinds of tragedies. And the way to look at it, I think, for me, I even think about losing followers as well, certainly. It's not a big deal because it's not my business. But it's not necessarily a net negative when you lose one follower, because in other ways that makes your other followers, your other fans, feel that much stronger about you. Nowadays, people value the values of the brands and teams and logos they support. And so if you are to lose, and the way that Brendan puts it as well, you'll hear, is that you don't want those followers in the first place. If they're going to ditch you because you say that it should not be easy for 18-year-olds to get assault rifles, as an example. So think about it that you might make the other followers feel that much stronger. So you might lose one follower, you might lose one quote-unquote fan, but perhaps it's only losing like 0.7 of a follower or fan, because those other fans are going to become that much more passionate. They're going to advocate for you. They may tell their family or friends, I like this team even more now because they use their platform in a positive way. So a lot to say there for sure. And again, we get into a little bit of how Brendan looks at it with his perspective and the people that he works with. But certainly important. And again, good to see that folks are using the platform to speak out, because we just cannot have this continue to happen. So no further ado, listen up, because you're going to really enjoy and learn a lot in my conversation here with Brendan Kaminsky of Be Known. Back with today's guest, and I am so dang excited. I've been wanting to have this guy on for a while. Super impressive work in the space. Whether you know it or not, you've seen a lot of the people that he works with doing great things. And I'm joined on the podcast today by Brendan Kaminsky. He is the founder of Be Known. Welcome to the podcast today, Brendan.
Thank you, Neil. Really appreciate your words, and excited to be here chatting with you. I know we've been talking about doing it for a while.
Hell yeah. Really awesome to be able to pick your brain, learn from you. You have a lot of good insight into this greater space overall and are really making things happen. Before we get into the meat of our discussion, Brendan, tell us about you. Tell us about your career path, how you got into the space, and what you're doing now, and any tips for folks that want to emulate what you do.
Yeah, thanks. So I've been working in sports and entertainment, mostly on the sports side, probably 99% on the sports side. And really, Neil, I think for me, I've always wanted to follow like my passion and like what I enjoy doing every day, what I enjoy waking up and doing, what doesn't feel like work. And so even shortly after graduation, I went to UNC, graduated May of 2012, and out of school, like I didn't have a clear path. Like you'll have some people that, be like, oh, I have my job or my internship lined up, 6 months before graduation, or even maybe further along than that. And like, I didn't know, like I worked at a startup company out of school that I met through doing like campus representative work. Like in school, I was like an ambassador for them. Mm-hmm. And, and I enjoyed it. And I like picked up some stuff that I liked. And then I, worked at Bloomberg for a little bit doing marketing and just like, didn't like it, and like, I wasn't like really against it, but I was like, this is not the industry I want to be in. And the more I was doing stuff with sports entertainment, the more that I just like was like, let me just pursue this. And, eventually found myself at ESPN, and was on the social team and spent, 6, 7 years there, and like wouldn't trade it for the world. I can't say I loved being in Bristol, Connecticut, but I think I did my badge of honor. I went through the process. I feel like it's like business school is what I viewed Bristol, Connecticut as. And it's, it was super fun. Like the people that I met and the things I was doing. And, you think you understand, something, you think you understand sports and digital and social media. And then you get to ESPN and then you're like, damn, I didn't know anything, or like
Yeah.
and I'm not saying ESPN is the only one. There's plenty, right, of organizations like Bleacher Report and what they've done. And, there's a million. I won't even try to list them off because I'm going to forget organizations. But yeah, I just learned a lot. And, there's a lot to say there. But, long story short, I ended up leaving last year to start, my own agency, branding and social media agency. And what we do is we work with clients, across sports to help them, build their presence, find opportunities, help with social strategy, and having a blast doing it.
And when you think about how you kind of fell into the space, like, did you think about, hey, I want to try to work in a place that's I'm passionate about, or an area that I'm passionate about? Like you mentioned having that time at Bloomberg. And even before we started recording, we talked about how, like, when you work in sports and maybe to a greater extent, even sports and social, it almost doesn't feel like a job at times because it's fun, it's passion. And so did you kind of have this mindset of, hey, I want to have a job that I love and can be passionate about and can throw my heart into, or was just kind of, hey, like, ESPN sounds cool. It sounds cooler than Bloomberg. Let me give it a shot.
Yeah, it was definitely more in depth than like, hey, this sounds cool. Like the first time I was introduced to an ESPN contact, I definitely was like, this is amazing. I mean, I was, just graduated school, had a friend of a friend, who just like knew someone that worked there and spoke to them and was really aggressive and followed up many times, to like finally have a call and discussion with them. And yeah, it was, I'm not going to sit here and say it was super calculated, because, I'm someone who, like it's Memorial Day weekend. Someone's like, oh, it's Memorial Day weekend. You have any plans? I'm like, oh yeah, it's Memorial Day weekend. That's right. No, I don't. I am out here in Florida and, going to enjoy the weekend and, be with some friends and stuff, but, working and not doing stuff. So anyways, I'm not super calculated. Always, it just depends on what I'm doing. And I don't love to plan very far ahead. I mean, I have big picture thinking, but, for me, like I was saying before, I really like wanted to do something I'm passionate about. And of course, the opportunity to work at ESPN, I was flattered, and I moved from New York and I went down there and, wouldn't trade it for the world. Best thing to happen in my career. And, all the people I met and, the fraternity amongst ESPN is just incredible. And to this day, some of my closest, friends, come from ESPN. So yeah, I didn't really know what to expect, and I didn't know how long I'd be there. And I certainly didn't expect to be there 6+ years. It's even crazy to hear me say that out loud. I cannot believe it was that long. But yeah, I mean, it was, I definitely wanted to pursue again what I wanted, what I loved.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely get more into everything you learned and picked up at ESPN. But I kind of want to hear how you, like, we hear different sort of, quote unquote origin stories for folks that end up working in, the greater social media space. Some people start out on the journalism side. Some other folks start out on the creative and content side. Some folks start out on the marketing side. Like, how would you characterize your path into social media and how it ultimately affected how you ended up sort of growing in the space?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I don't consider myself a journalist. I didn't go to journalism school. I know there's a ton of people in this sports media space and just media space generally, that went to their journalism schools. And I met a ton of smart people. I'm like, damn, like I wish I learned all that in school. Like I didn't have a production background. And for me, the way that I was first introduced to it is like when I was in school, I was a campus representative for EA Sports,
Mhm.
and there was this nationwide campaign where every like all these different schools had like someone like me and someone like my friend. We were doing it together, and you would just promote EA Sports on campus. You'd throw video game tournaments. You would promote their products, and it was a fun gig. And then they had a campaign to give away a free Snoop Dogg concert to whoever could drive the most eyeballs to their Facebook app webpage, which those web pages don't exist the way they did back in the day.
Yeah.
And so it was like whoever would get the most votes to the app on Facebook won a free Snoop Dogg concert, and we won. So out of the nationwide
Wow.
contest, all these different schools like UNC won, and Snoop Dogg came and performed, and I got to meet him after the
Wow.
show, and it was like, yeah, oh, it was amazing and coolest thing ever. And I was like, this all happened because of this social media campaign where we're encouraging people to like vote for their school once a day and watch
Mhm.
videos and all on Facebook. So like that's what really it was like kind of guerrilla marketing. It
Yeah.
was very organic. And I was like, let me just maybe there's more opportunity. And so that was like it. It was and nowadays, in school, there are like classes on social, which I've always been curious what those look like. And and Caleb Mezzi, shout out to him. Actually, he's the one that comes to mind who
Oh
has
yeah.
been educating people in school for social stuff, and I know he's doing that. But I never was, so none of it was in the classroom. It was sort of just like, hey, let's take this and see how I can keep scaling.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, you came out at a good time when social media was really starting to reach like a little bit more maturity. I think when I came out, I was, back in the Stone Age when Facebook was mostly still school age and eventually other kids as well. So you get the ESPN, you're going to work in the social media area. So tell me, I guess, what that role looked like when you got there. What did ESPN look like when it came to the social media of its talent, which is where you end up working quite a bit. So tell me about what your role was early on and also really what the objectives were of your role.
Yeah, so my first role at ESPN was a social media coordinator, and it was for college football.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my contact at ESPN, called me and we were talking about it. He's like, "Yeah, it's a college football role." I'm like, coming from Philadelphia, like, look, obviously I'm a big sports fan, like you are, like a million people are.
Mm-hmm.
College football, coming from Philly, like just wasn't a thing. Like it really, like I didn't realize I was so ignorant to understand how big college football was and how much bigger it was in college basketball until I got to ESPN. So, I said to him, like, look, honestly, I don't know college football. I really don't know any of the big guys. And, he's like, look, it's fine. We're just trying to get the right people in the door. And so that was the job. And it was just managing the accounts, right? Starting with Twitter and then doing Instagram and Facebook. But like, every Saturday it was sitting all day on campus, and me and my manager, like we would just, tweet for ESPN college football. So we watch all the games, tweet the highlight videos, articles, work on College Football Live, their studio show, which was Monday through Friday. And it was college football. And like, I learned a lot about college football and, and just started doing that. And then eventually after the season ended, then it became ESPN college basketball. Then it became NBA on ESPN, which NBA on ESPN, when that became an opportunity, I was like so happy as an NBA fan, and NBA is like, it's like the most social sport, right?
Yeah.
So that was awesome. And so, yeah, it was managing those accounts, and it was just almost like when it came to NBA and ESPN, I was able to like really like manage everything about it, work with the talent. I had a lot more, freedom when I was doing that than when I first started. And, there's a lot to say, but I mean, it expanded in social media at ESPN over the years, just expanded so much. And it was just an eye-opening experience. And like, I was so lucky to be able to like see it all grow and be part of some of it in the early days. And I wasn't, there's plenty of people that were there in like the much early days, but I was there, relatively early. I don't know, like I joined in 2014. I don't know when probably like 5 years before that, maybe, I guess, was when they like really, because Twitter, people started joining Twitter in like 2009, 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just grown so much over the years.
And when you're manning those accounts, and maybe this evolved over your time there, and even since, was it really just, hey, like, drive engagement? You're going to be like, we just want lots of eyeballs, and also even like, are you thinking about tune in? Are you thinking about almost not mimicking is the wrong term, but I guess amplifying the storylines that they are discussing on College Football Live? It's not like, hey, Brendan, go find out what is popping on college football Twitter, on NBA Twitter or whatever. This is what whatever NBA Countdown is gonna be talking about. Let's amplify that. Like, how did all that kind of play together across those different channels, where you ultimately are, telling sports stories, but you may be speaking to different fan bases, different things might resonate a little bit differently. So how do you guys think about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, over time, the more time that I spent there, the more flexibility I had. Part of that was because you have more reps, you become more senior, but also part of it is just because the overall strategy changed. I mean, when I first started, I had very little creative freedom. Like, I was, it was like, hey, let's tweet out a bunch of links. Let's put out Getty images. Let's represent like College Football Live and pick the best moments. And then we have some sales executions. But, it wasn't like create a really, dope graphic, or like, let's edit a video that like is a little fancier. Cause like back then, videos had to drive back to ESPN.com. I mean, when I was doing it, Todd Gurley was there when I was, when Todd Gurley was like awesome at Georgia. And so just an example, let's say we're going to post a Todd Gurley touchdown. It would have to on Twitter be Todd Gurley for his third touchdown of the day. And it would be like, watch here and go to the link. Like, it was not posting on Vine. It was not posting a native video. And if it did, your hand would get slapped. So the strategy just changed significantly. And part of that is just like the industry. And part of that was just ESPN realizing that, like, we gotta play to what the platforms want, which is engagement. And so as time went on, right, then it became more about that. So I think, to answer your question on like what's trending online, like that was always part of it. Like, they always encouraged, like, let's see what's online. Let's make it, like, go to Reddit and College Football Reddit, find good stories and stuff. There was more of that as time went on. And part of that's leadership and management and stuff like that. But it's, so it was just, but then it was also definitely the storylines, right? Like, we'd have tools, right? Like, like there's a million, we have tools, right? As any social media producer does, to find out what the most important stories are. But no, I mean, when you're there, like, it's not only ESPN stuff. Like, you have a responsibility to represent the college football fan, right? It was always like by the fan, like, or for the fan, right? Like, we want to do the things that are going to make fans engage. And certainly there's always priorities, but like, this is ESPN college football, but this is college football. If there's a big college football story that didn't necessarily derive from ESPN, we're absolutely going to cover it.
Yeah. No, I mean, just hearing you talk about that makes me think of whether there, I mean, I'm sure there's not a singular point in history, but there was at some point some sort of inflection where, all of a sudden now it's like at one point the editorial team, whether it's the Sports Illustrated editors or ESPN's production team or whatever, are thinking about what are the storylines we want to cover. And then at some point it was like, well, let's look at what fans are talking about. Now we have all this access to all these conversations happening, and we can see what fans are talking about, what they want to cover. And then at some point you got, what are people clicking on ESPN.com? What are they watching on the ESPN app? Or now it's like to your point, like, what are they talking about on Reddit? And instead of having maybe the ESPN programming affect or hopefully affect what the conversations are, it's almost a little bit more vice versa, where here's what's popping on there. Let's talk about that on College Football Live, on NBA Countdown, whatever it might be. Did you find that to be something that you like actively noticed, or did it start to become more cohesive over time because everyone was having similar conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where as time went on, like I said, there was more creative freedom and there was more that ESPN didn't, like ESPN would not necessarily hire people specifically for social media back in the day, right? It would be like someone who's interested in being on TV or producer, and then they would get rotated into a social media team. So there just became more people that like really are from this era of like producing content 24/7 for social and understanding what that fan wants. But I'd say that, for anyone that's doing an account, like it has to be like what's going to resonate with fans. And, we would always be doing the service to engage with the fans and always be doing the service to grow the accounts. And I mean, analytics just became a beast, and it continues to be a beast for me. And, some of us became really addicted, and anyone, like I'm to this day, like I'm addicted to analytics, and we like use that to drive a lot of our strategy.
There's our headline. Brendan Kaminsky, I'm addicted to analytics. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's fine.
I want to touch briefly on like when did you start to really, or when did ESPN overall, I guess, start to think strategically about the social media accounts of its talent? We'll get into this because I know you and I've worked together just through my job on how we maximize and leverage the accounts of the talent who have enormous reach, who have enormous engagement. So when did that sort of light bulb go off for ESPN, or when did your role start to also think about, hey, you're doing a kick-ass job on these these quote unquote brand platforms, but how can we get XYZ individual who has a great personality, how can we get their platforms to be more effective, and how can it help all parties?
Yeah. So that happened sometime in 2018, because I moved to New York October of 2018, I believe it was. And, it was something where, ESPN just realized we have all these internal influencers. Let's work with them. Like we've never formalized a program as like, hey, here's ways that we can work better with the social team, and we'll make content for you and explain best practices. Right. And like, as best practices change every minute, every second. So it's just like a constant communication thing with folks. And I was the one leading it, and it was a blast, man. I mean, I really enjoyed that role, and got to just sit with a bunch of personalities and, explain. And some people were better than others, but some just, with Instagram and now TikTok, like it's not easy to produce for anybody. Right. And imagine if you're, someone on TV who's there, like, I don't know, on TV 5 hours a day and, has a really busy schedule. Like, you don't know how to produce an Instagram story, or you don't know the best way to put up an Instagram reel or a TikTok, or the optimal, Twitter video size, right? Like these are things in the weeds, but as they're all very important. So I just built a program and had an amazing, team, and worked with people and worked really closely with the social team to just figure out, like, how can we all win together, right? Like we're all part of the same family and team, and let's just, figure out ways to produce content on site and to make ESPN content better. And, these are the people that represent the worldwide leader, and how do we make them, featured in our social media? So that's really what it was. And I think it's just a way of the world now is, talent and individuals are just have the most power online, right? So me and you, like, people have relationships with us and connections with us. You work at Greenfly, I have Be Known. I would love to think that people have a relationship with Be Known. They have a relationship with me, though, and the people that are on our staff. And like, so the more that we, use our megaphones, so however big our megaphones are, which aren't that big, compared to the general population and, true influencers, but it's important for us to like use our social platforms to leverage, because everyone has, some sort of influence to their networks. And so I think that was just in line with ESPN, and it was really smart, and I was really happy to be part of it.
And when you look at whether ESPN or clients now or both, like, are there certain lines that talent, or that you almost even recommend talent draw, where, hey, Twitter is a place that I'm going to be a little bit more of the person that people know, the talent, the head that they see on TV or on whatever, on broadcast, versus Facebook's for my family and my close friends, or Instagram is for this. Like, do you have to almost delineate, like, this is where I am blank the talking head, and this is where I am the normal guy that lives down the street and mows his lawn?
Yeah, so I think it's more on how the content is optimized, and timing of content, and knowing the cadence of each platform, and less on like you're going to create a different personality for each platform, because more often than not, you take a good piece of content and you distribute it. If it's good, it goes everywhere, and so even if it's something that might be better for a younger demo, if it did well on your Twitter page, then probably is going to do well on your Facebook page, right? Even if Facebook is an older demo. So I think it's really about content optimization. It's about understanding what's going to make your audience grow and engage on each platform, and looking at it from that lens. Like, yeah, sure, certainly there might be something that's a better Twitter play versus an Instagram play. And Twitter is the real-time platform, right? So you're not going to live, like, you live tweet a game, you're not going to like live Instagram feed post or whatever. Like, you could do Instagram stories. So there's different mechanisms, but I think it's
Brandon,
really
like, would you almost like recommend that they have almost like a Finsta, like, hey, this is the one that fans are gonna see, and you post that kind of content there, and your other Instagram, this is the one where you can post like pictures of you hanging out with the grandkids or the nephews or whatever?
No, I don't really suggest, like, I think that I get it if people use it personally. Like, for me, right, if I was a talent and I like was on TV all the time and I had this huge voice, and I, as someone who uses Instagram personally, and I mean, use it personally and professionally, but it's like a social tool. Like, would I want my feed to just be flooded with all my TV hits?
Right.
No, probably wouldn't. Like, if I'm talking about sports or politics or whatever it is, like, I don't want people to look at my feed and be like, boom, boom, boom. Maybe there's a happy medium, but the answer is not to break it up. I think that, certainly you could argue that you have a more private account that people don't know about for your closest. And I'd be an advocate for that, but I don't think it's, if that's passionate to you, but like passionate for you, but it's, to program multiple accounts. Like, if you're talking about programming them, no, I wouldn't. I really would say swallow your pride. Like, you should go all in on one account and figure out the best way to make it work. But also, more often than not, folks understand and they're like, cool, I'll go all in on this. And, the younger demo uses Instagram and will, like, actually like be looking at it every single day, right? So they might have a better idea of how they want to use it. But for most people that I've dealt with, they're like, cool, like, just tell me what I should do on Instagram. I have trust in you and what you guys are saying, and, whatever is best. So, yeah, I mean, but everyone has their own strategy.
Yeah, I think, like, what you're getting is, you want to, it's not just okay, it's encouraged to be a full person online, and not just be the people you see on TV. Like, it's fans are going to love you more when they can relate to you as whatever, a father, as a sports fan whose team just lost. Like, there are things that you can do to, to not to use a cliche term, but to humanize yourself, which ultimately makes those fans, feel closer to you.
Agreed.
And I guess to piggyback on this point a little bit, we talk about authenticity all the time. That's a word that's thrown around quite a bit for a good reason, though. And like, how much of what someone is on television or wherever their hit is, streaming platforms, is like not hyperbole, but they are talent and they are playing a role. And there's a lot of themselves in that role, but there might be emphasizing it a little bit, or a charactering themselves a little bit, if that's even a word. Versus on social, like, how much is it? Hey, this is a social account of you, the talent, versus, and there's a little bit of you, the real person, or maybe not a little bit, there's a lot of you, the real person in it, but it's almost like I guess, kayfabe just in some capacity for that WWE term. Like, how much of that is them, again, social media embodying who the fans see them as versus who they are, more authentically?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a strong believer that it should be a one-to-one correlation as closely as possible. I'm not as big of a believer on, yeah, like you should lean into stuff more and show a different side of you. Now, it's good to show personality in a way that people don't traditionally see you. But like, if you're really into, memes, or you're like, you have a really funny personality and like you're a natural with comedy, you should probably like you be very active on TikTok and you could do very well. And you should lean into moments that are trending sounds and memes and all that stuff because it'll resonate. But like, if you're very stern and a serious person and that's your whole MO, then you shouldn't force it. And maybe TikTok, I mean, frankly, it's getting to the point where TikTok, there's a play for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just are like a very serious person and you like staying in a certain role and you don't want to be spread too thin and you only want to have a few platforms, then like do you. Like I don't really like the whole character thing on, hey, this is online in the internet, you should behave in a different way. I think there's things that are more acceptable and you're able to express yourself in other ways than maybe you can't online, can in person, or if you're on TV or you're in the public spotlight. You can definitely showcase things you wouldn't otherwise. But when it comes to personality, like I think it should be as close to who you are as a person. Because what I don't enjoy is for anyone, if I meet them in person and they're very different than what they were on social media, I think there's a huge disconnect. And
Yeah.
alarming is like too strong of a word to use, but it's a letdown. Like when I follow you, like I see your messages and tweets or whatever, that should be you as much as it can. Like I should be able to meet you in person and not feel like I'm talking to someone different.
No, it totally makes sense. And I guess that's a good point too, to think about. Let's have the like tweets are my own conversation here around, like,
Yeah.
in a couple of ways. Like, one is, how do you, whether you're working with people now with Be Known or before with ESPN, of making sure that they are transcending the, wherever their employer, for lack of a better term, if they're, whether it's DAZN, ESPN, Fox Sports, or any other entertainment platform as well, of not wanting to necessarily be pigeonholed as to this person is an ESPN talent. That's their MO. That's their character, because that's not gonna last forever in most cases, unless you're like a lifer like a Chris Berman or something. And so, like, how do you make sure when you are working with individual talent that they are not, that association is still there because it has a ton of value, but it's not a forever thing, so that you don't have whatever blank NFL or blank Fox Sports on your handle necessarily. And if you ever leave that entity, you're kind of SOL to some degree.
Yeah. So remind me, the question is, how do you make sure that they are staying authentic?
Yeah, well, I guess is that a concern, or even on the top of your mind, of making sure that fans are engaging and falling in love with Brendan Kaminsky, person, and that if Brendan Kaminsky ever leaves his employer ESPN, that he's not, his entire account isn't revolved around that persona, I guess, or identity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it all comes down to content, right? Content is king. The more that you are putting out content that your fans like, the more that you'll build that connection with them and they'll be loyal to you, right? And really it comes down to like fan engagement, right? So that's why I always encourage, do Q&As, do lives, reply to fans, don't reply to negative comments with like something like negative, because that's not good. But I think that it all comes down to how you treat the audience. Like, if let's say you work at Fox Sports and all you do is post Fox Sports clips. That's not to say if you left Fox Sports, you couldn't still maintain that audience. It just depends on how you're communicating, how you're messaging. Are you putting out the content that they like? Like if every clip you put out is a 5-minute video on Twitter, your fans will not retweet that as much as if it's a 30-second video or a minute-long video, just because the attention span on Twitter is much shorter. So the more that you're optimizing generally, the more you'll be able to reach your audience and the more that they'll appreciate your content. And then the more that you're just like directly engaging with them, like you can build monster fans from that. So it really just, I think it's like a big picture principle where, people will follow you if they feel that you're being genuine, and it doesn't matter like what type of content it is necessarily, where like if you're not bringing them that content when you leave a company, like they won't come back to you. Like they like Neo for Neo, and wherever he goes, they should continue, assuming you're loyal.
No, I think it's a great call out. It's a cool thing to it's almost like I ask the average person, hey, do you know who Pat McAfee is, for example? They'll probably be like, oh yeah, he's awesome. I watched some of his stuff. And you ask him, well, who does he work for? They probably don't know. And that's almost a good thing. Like they're more, they like the personality of the person and don't really care much about the brand association, which is kind of cool.
It is. It's good for talent and not as good for brands.
So let's talk a little bit, a few more minutes left here with Brendan Kaminsky, founder of Be Known. Definitely check out Be Known. Great stuff. There's so much more we're going to try to cover, but we don't have too much time. And tell me about like especially the last couple of years where there's been a lot more talk of course, just cultural commentary on race problems. On now we have certainly unfortunately more gun tragedies. So like when you're working with individuals with Be Known or whatever capacity, and you're talking to them about how to approach those subjects, is it just, hey, whatever's on your mind, say it, or make sure that you understand that those words are going to be parsed, they're going to be scrutinized, you might alienate a certain percentage of your followership, you have to be okay with that? Like, what are those conversations like with you and your clients?
Yeah, it's a good call out, and it's really I think we're in a sensitive time in society just generally, and like your words are very important. So like in the example of the gun tragedy in Texas that did happen, that's completely devastating, and as a society we need to change for the better in a big way. But when that happens, if I have a client that is talking about that, no, I'd say that here's what I'll say. When that happens, nothing else is important, right? Like in the world, when we see this tragic news, we need to be very on alert, and we need to be sure that we're not putting our clients in any sort of position that makes them look ignorant, makes them look naive is the better word. Naive is what I'm looking for. If they're not on social talking about something that's happening in sports or making a joke about something when the world is in depression over this. So like we need to make, and especially on Twitter, right? Especially on Twitter. So that's when we're almost on red alert, and this happened last week. Hey, like we made this piece of content, like this should wait, I think that's always really important. But then also empowering and making sure them know, yeah, like your voice is really important and should be heard. And we had a talent that, he was go on TV and talk about it. And it was like, we need to absolutely get this up. And, we need to use the amplification of your voice and explain it. Now, one thing you said is like, say whatever you want. And it's like, well, it depends on, first of all, where you work and what the restrictions might be. In the example of this is different, but in the example of political stuff, that's when it gets really tricky, right? So, I remember I had a client say that they had a picture of themselves with Donald Trump from like, or not Donald Trump, it was with Joe Biden from like, a long time ago. And like, they're like, it's just like, I think it was after the election. And it's just like, should I post this? And like, should I not? And the political stuff is when it gets more tricky, when it gets trickier. And I think really it's, because of, Trump just has been so divisive. So I think that's the area where if you were a personality at ESPN, it's just like there's things that can make you that can rub people the wrong way and be out of out of the scope of what ESPN is looking for them to do. But like at the end of the day, like what we do is we like to empower our talent and like the people that we work with to use their voice. Mm-hmm. And the last thing we'll ever be is a gatekeeper, right? Like we're here to just help you be successful. And at the end of the day and be efficient and buttoned up. And we want to make you aware of what are topics you should be talking about. But I'm not a publicist, right. Some of these things, we're not, actively handling publicity for our people. So if there's ever things where it's damage control, fortunately, and knock on wood, like his social is like you do one thing wrong or you put one thing out there and it can lead to it's a whole domino effect. But typically, like we're not trying to get into that lane but we absolutely, if we ever get questions, like we will empower them to use their voice.
And you also have to like explain to them that, hey, yes, make this statement, say what's on your mind about whatever, Roe v. Wade, about, gun control. Just know that you're going to get some responses that are going to be negative. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of social media, and be ready.
And the other,
yeah.
The other thing on that front is like, like in the Biden example of like, hey, should I post this picture of me with Biden? I was like, I see no issue with this. I said, if you're worried about comments on your Instagram and if people unfollow you because you posted this picture, then that's their problem. Like those are the followers that you don't even want, right? Exactly. Those are the people that aren't even important because and I wouldn't worry about it. And so I think that's what I said. And I actually still don't remember if it was Biden or Trump, but it was one of those things where I'm 99% sure it's Biden, but it's like you should do, you have the right to post a picture with the president. Now, if it's Trump, there was a whole different thing. So it was Biden. So anyways, it's important to be very buttoned up.
And for the lighter version of that question, I guess, of and kind of looking at this very polarizing nature of hot take sports these days, of like, I think we probably, that if you make a potentially polarizing statement like X player is the GOAT or X player is not the GOAT and should never be called the GOAT or whatever that statement is, like you're going to get a response, you're going to get engagement. If the goal is engagement, or then you can make those polarizing statements. So how is that either like almost baked into the strategy? Do you pull out like, hey, it's like, what are your strongest opinions? Let's use that. Like how is that coming to play when you're looking at growing the reach and brand and distinctiveness of a given talent member?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Like to be very clear, when it comes to something going on in the world, whether it's a racism problem, whether it's gun control, whether it's a tragedy, a shooting, nothing is about engagement there. Absolutely right. Nothing.
Yeah. I'm thinking more about the sports version.
Yes, totally. Totally. So transition. Right. So transitioning over to the sports equation. Absolutely. Right. Like engagement and, view counts being high, all of that is factored in. We never want to take talent out of context. Mm-hmm. So we will always be mindful of that. But yeah, absolutely. Right. Like we'll look at numbers. If someone had a clip that went off online, or if there's a topic that's really hot, like we will encourage talent to chime in on those topics, because we know that they're already hot.
Yeah, no, I think it's both a good thing and a bad thing, I guess, on social, that you almost the strongest opinions win, the most divisive opinions win, I guess, in the sports space. And that's why we have these debate shows all over the place, and it's got to be tempting at least to like, hey, I want to have a polarizing opinion because that's what's going to drive engagement, and like you almost back your way into being more polarized than maybe you originally, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not all about being polarizing. It certainly helps, but some of it also just comes down to authority and being useful to your fans and providing utility. So, like, if you have a strong voice in a specific topic and we see that topic is trending, you just explaining, not necessarily making a hot take, certainly that can do well, but like, it's really just like, okay, you're the king on this specific topic, or queen, you're the king or queen on this topic. Like, make your voice heard, because at the end of the day, people just want to hear from you, and they want to hear from you in that moment. They don't want to wait until you're on TV in 5 hours or 10 hours. They want to hear right now.
Yeah. A couple more quick things with you, Brendan, and then we'll get to this little shareable stat. I promise I can keep you all day, every day.
No worries.
I want to talk a little about the idea of talent and individuals using the tools themselves versus hiring someone to create and or even post on their behalf. Like, are you seeing more in your career now, more evolution one way or the other? Are talent now more equipped with the skills? Are they more wanting and willing to learn how to use the platforms to be able to post their own TikTok or post their own reel? Or are most of them still, hey, this is a small part of my job, and I'm going to hire someone to do it for me because they know best?
Yeah, so everyone's different. Like, big picture, everyone's different. What we really try to do at Be Known, and what I try to do over time, is create a partnership and create something that both sides are contributing. And the most successful people on social media are the ones that have a team behind them and understand the different layers to pull and the different platforms, but also resonate because it's them and it's their voice, right? Like, if someone, if you were LeBron James and you come to me and say, hey, I want you to do my social media, but I don't want to do anything. And here you go. Here's the keys, right? Like, what am I going to do? Right. I'm not LeBron James. I don't know his voice. Like, you see his tweets and stuff, but like, it has to be from that person as much as possible. And there's partnerships and things that can go and play. But really, like, for me, I am not of the mindset, and over time, especially as it comes to talent, like, the way we are growing and scaling is by almost like being just a resource, however we can, to make content, to tell you what the best practices are, to coach your internal team if you have one, to have Slack channels and whatever it might be, however we can help. But it's not like, hey, here are the keys, like, we're going to go ahead and do it, because at the end of the day, like, that's only sustainable for so long unless you have a monster operation. But I think that, resources aside, if there were infinite resources, it's always better coming from the person. So the person has to be bought in. So I enjoy working with people that want to learn and want to work, and aren't in a position where it's like, I know this is really important to me, but I just don't really care. Like, can you just go ahead and do it?
Yeah.
Like, if it's like that, it probably doesn't make sense. Now, I'm not saying the person needs to be like really into it, right? Like, to the point where, it takes away from their day-to-day job. Like, everyone should stick to what they are good at and their strengths and weaknesses, or their strengths rather. But it has to be a two-way street. It always has to be a two-way street, and it goes both ways, right? Like, I need participation and they need participation from us. But it's not as much just doing it all.
Yeah. And I as you were saying that, like, I was thinking that the sort of poster child in my head is Tom Brady, who, like, I don't think fans think that he's creating all this incredible content, but you can tell it's that he has a role in it, that he's helping to craft it,
Yeah,
hiring people that have the production capabilities, of course.
absolutely. What a job they do.
One last thing for you, Brendan, then we'll get to the shareable stat, and that is kind of the way that things are heading now, where, I think certainly 15 years ago, you got famous for being on TV, for being on radio, whatever it was. And that fame then was transported to social media. Now we're almost seeing a little bit of, like, there's some examples of kind of the other way around, where an Addison Rae, is famous on TikTok, and all of a sudden she's like on the red carpet interviewing celebrities. And in some ways, people resented that because she didn't come up, through the ranks, so to speak, on that side. So, like, is it almost now where you can use social, like social gets you famous, and then you can use that elsewhere, as opposed to the other way around, where these more, traditional talent platforms made you famous, that then allowed you to take advantage of social? Like, how do you see those things intertwining moving forward? I guess is one direction going to be, more predominant than the other?
Yeah, I mean, as time goes on, everything's moving to digital, right? Everything is moving towards OT, over the top platforms. It's moving towards stuff being streamed online. And so, as a creator, as a content creator, the more that you have an audience online, the more valuable you're going to be to any platform, including especially TV, as TV tries to figure out how to connect with the younger demo. So when I talk to people and they tell me, younger kids, like, hey, I want to, be on TV, or I want to be like a reporter, what do you recommend? Like, a lot of times, more often than not, or maybe it's every time, I'm like, I recommend becoming a digital talent and building an audience, because that'll ultimately give you leverage. The model of like going to a small town TV station in Arkansas, I'm just picking a random city, a random place. So, going to, a random, Arkansas, and just, be like, hey, I'm going to build my resume. I'm going to work here. I'm going to do TV reps, and eventually ESPN is going to notice me. It's like, to me, those days, I think that's going to get phased out over time, because there's only going to be so much opportunity that way, and only so much distribution that way. Like, the way that you're really going to stand out is from having a dope TikTok, or a really active Instagram. And like, if you are good, like, talent is just talent, like content, like good talent is just good talent. So if you resonate online, there's going to be a way for you to resonate. Like, if we're talking about like ESPN eventually will just like all be streamed, like and so that audience, like, as time goes on, you'll just become more valuable. So if you are that talent, like Pat McAfee can resonate on, it doesn't matter what platform Pat McAfee is on, that man will resonate.
Yeah.
So that is, to me, the model is building an audience online and then taking that audience with you, because you're able to go direct to them and you're able to push out all your stuff. So I recommend folks figure out their niche and be really strong on digital.
No, that's such a great point of really, and I think it's a good place for us to cut off, and just a great sort of full circle where you build your audience. Your audience is you. It's yours. You own it. ESPN doesn't own it. Fox Sports doesn't own it. If you build your audience and they are engaged with you, like, that's yours to take with you, hopefully, the rest of your life, which is super compelling.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Brendan, we can touch on this stuff all day, and we will have some more fun in our BK Briefs segment. But first, episode of Shareable Stat coming up right now. Such a fantastic chat with Brendan Kaminsky of Be Known. Could really pick his brain all day on this stuff. Just a lot of great stories to tell as well, and you're going to hear some of them in our BK Briefs segment. You're definitely want to stick around for that. But first, episode Shareable Stat. This episode of Shareable Stat looks at the growth rates of Instagram for MLB teams, Major League Baseball teams, since the start of the season in early April. And this is just stunning. to see how much the New York Mets have grown. This data comes from CrowdTangle. Hat tip to Zoom for pointing it out. But the Instagram for the New York Mets since the season began has grown 33%. That is a lot, and they were not starting from a small number either. Just incredible. And the closest team, the second place team among all MLB teams in Instagram growth this season is at 4.4%. So you're looking at 33% and 4%. Just simply stunning. So how do they do this? No magic tricks, no really big secrets. If you peruse their posts, as I did, I want to, be able to give some insight and analysis. And they do a lot of good things that other teams have done as well. Using the carousel posts effectively with a nice eye-catching static photo that then leads into the highlight rather than going just straight highlight. They've also done a really good job of featuring different players on their team with some really strong graphics, especially pregame. When fans are feeling good, no matter what the outcome is, it definitely is a good time to share some of that fire content and graphics to get fans excited about that night's starting pitcher or someone who's on a hot streak. They've also done well to maximize milestones and historical achievements, including a combined no-hitter earlier this year. They've been very selective and effective in the photos they've chosen from their Getty feed or their Greenfly feed or whatever it might be, and done some really good copy as well. Leaning into the pride that fans feel for New York and for the Mets and for the team's history. So another good aspect there. They've also been playing really well, and it always helps to post wins and winning highlights as well, but not to that exponential degree they have that lead. That comes from their really effective use of the platform. They also have taken advantage of celebrities that have visited. There's a post with Shakira that is among their most popular this season so far. So check it out. Go and peruse their grid because that's what this pertains to, just the in-feed posts that CrowdTangle tracks. But again, that shareable stat, the New York Mets have grown the most among all teams on Instagram this season with 33% growth, followed by someone at 4%. Just, again, stunning. Check it out. Talk about it. Learn from it. But stick around for the BK Brief segment with Brendan Kaminsky of Be Known. Right back in this episode's Shareable Stat. I am joined once again by Brendan Kaminsky. He is the founder of Be Known. We had a tremendous interview, Brendan. It was so awesome to learn from you. Are you now ready to jump into some BK Briefs?
I was born ready for BK Briefs.
Hell yeah. All right. This first one is actually maybe my favorite question of the whole podcast. Your favorite SportsCenter anchor growing up. If I go ask 10-year-old Brendan, which SportsCenter anchor is your favorite, what would you tell me?
It's hard to go against Stuart Scott.
Hell yeah. I think we all grew up thinking about being as cool as the other side of the pillow. And
Chris Berman, yeah, Chris Berman or Stuart Scott.
Hard to argue with either of those. That's super good ones there. Number 2, tell me your favorite post from a talent that you collaborated with and why. Any talent, anytime. That social post that you're like that's the one that I want to be able to look back on 20 years from now.
Yeah. Probably, I don't know if I'll look back on this 20 years from now, but what I really enjoyed is when I did when like everyone looks at their Spotify, like Spotify is like, oh, you spent, 100 hours listening to Drake and 50 hours listening to, Pitbull, like, yeah, the Spotify Wrapped graphic. So I made one of those for Stephen A. that was like, you spent, 900,000 hours laughing at the Cowboys, which did really well on social and was very timely just because everyone was sharing those graphics and it absolutely crushed. I'd say that, or for Stephen A., there was a tweet once that said, Siri is looking for a new voice. And then, we talked about it and he quote tweeted it and said, fine, I'll do it. And the engagement absolutely exploded on that. Like that's still to this day, I think one of his top 5 tweets of all time, because everyone was just imagining like Stephen A. being Siri. So those are two that come to mind.
That is awesome. We need to do like a part 2 podcast where we just talk about Stephen A. stories. Those are great.
Agreed.
Number 3. This is seems like a good one. Tell me, your top sort of guiding principle or mantra. Like, what would you want clients thinking about in their head, or even what guides your work when it comes to using social?
Yeah, when it comes to using social, number one, yeah, I'd say that follow what the platforms are telling, like follow the trends of the platforms. And unfortunately, it can be frustrating because you're like, oh, wait, I thought this was important, but now I'm told this is important. If you hear about a trend enough, there's a reason for it. And so, the best thing you can do and the best way you can be a good partner to a platform is to be an early adopter. So I always encourage talent, whether it's Twitter with Twitter Spaces, or Instagram with Reels, or back in the day, it was like who's doing live creatively, or Instagram TV, or Facebook with Reels. Like if you follow and do an early adopter, even if it doesn't engage super well, like you could be a case study for them, and it could lead to a better relationship with them, which
Yeah.
ultimately is better for your business.
No, I love that call out. Like it's almost like it's a not so hidden secret anymore that when there's a new feature that a platform introduces, or when they're talking about a given feature in like a press release or in a conference panel, it's usually a clue that they're pushing this right now. So if you use this feature, it's probably going to do well in the algorithm. And it's an old trick in the book, but it also, to your point, like it can become a case study. It becomes something that separates you as well.
Absolutely.
All right, another hard question for you here, Brendan. So get ready. Looking back at your time at UNC, the most memorable game from your time as a student with the Tar Heels.
That I attended or that I was just a student for?
Let's go with attended. How about that?
So attended. Well, let me start and say that it's not even close. Like during school, like my freshman year, we won the championship and we beat Michigan State. And I remember storming Franklin Street, which is the main strip in Chapel Hill. And I mean, winning a championship is unlike any other.
That team was good.
Yeah. So that's definitely number one. As far as what I attended, I wish I knew. I wish I knew that answer. It had. I mean, my favorite experience had to have been at the Dean Dome, like standing, like waited outside for hours, because if you had a really good ticket, a student ticket, you got to stand under the basket.
Wow.
I you know what? This was a really unfortunate when Austin Rivers hit that buzzer beater against UNC. I was at that one. That was a good game, but not a good game at all because we got dominated. So, yeah, those are really the two that come to mind. If I think of another one, I'll let you know.
Hey, just you could always have that picture in your head of celebrating the championship, which trumps any other game you could ever do, which is just awesome. Oh, I'm jealous.
Totally.
All right, number 5. This is an interesting one. Tell me the sports or entertainment talent that you do not work with, whose brand you admire and why. We've talked about a few, but who kind of sticks out to you? You're like, I don't work with them, but I would love to, or she does a really good job.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Pat McAfee is an absolute machine, and what he's been able to build is truly incredible. And not everyone is Pat McAfee. I mean, he's a talent that doesn't come around often, and he's in a different class than almost anybody else. But like, just how much he's prioritized content and how big his YouTube page is, and how he tweets out all of his clips and has a whole operation behind him. I just have so much respect for him and for embracing this so early on, and having his own show that also like when you asked where does he work, people can't name it. Like he works for himself, like he's not even behind a company. He's got FanDuel who pays a lot of money, but they're just a sponsor of his show. So I just am so impressed with him, and what he's doing is really beating almost everyone in the industry.
Definitely a good one there, and I'm sure like one that when you work with clients that you can speak to and be like, look at that dude and what he's doing by having a great content strategy. Like that's definitely something to admire and emulate. All right, this is gonna be an open-ended one, intentionally open-ended. Tell me your favorite day during your time at ESPN? It could be for whatever reason. Your favorite day when you look back on your years there.
NBA free agency, working with Woj. So, I mean, that was a few years ago. When was that? I don't know. It was when KD was a free agent, and went to the Nets. When he went to the Nets, spending all day with Woj, I mean, incredible. He just runs the industry, and being able to just be available and be a resource and be there all day. It was a very long day, and I'll never forget it. And I'll never forget when afterwards, when he like we're leaving, we're going back to the hotel, and he didn't know where his car keys was. He like his car keys, so we had to take a shuttle over to the hotel, and it's like the guy is literally a mastermind. Dominated. He especially dominated that free agency like he always does. But he got every scoop. But like he didn't know where his car keys was. Like he was just like he just lost them, and he just didn't know. And like he can do the hardest things in the world, but he did the simple thing, and he's just like he's just a genius. So that was amazing that day.
What a cool experience. I mean, there's people that would pay a lot of money just to sit there and watch him do his thing on a day like that. That's super cool.
Yep.
I've always wondered too. This answer has to be out there and somewhere in Twitter's database, at least, as to how many people have Woj alerts turned on for Twitter. Like, yeah, we can see his follower count, but I want to know how many people have alerts turned on. Because I bet you he's got to be like among the top. Maybe not
so
the top,
true
up there.
So true. I'd love to know the answer to that.
All right, number 7 for you, Brendan. Tell me, since we started talking a little bit earlier around just that starting your own business and doing your own thing, and how challenging but rewarding and gratifying it can be. So, in your year plus now running Be Known, tell me that the biggest lesson you learned so far running your own business.
I think one of the biggest lessons is everyone underestimates themselves and underestimates opportunities out there in the world, especially in this economy in this day and age. I think there's endless opportunities out there, and it's just like if you really believe in yourself and you have built friendships and professional contacts and have been kind over the years, like you never know when that relationship is going to come back to be helpful to you and be resourceful and could lead to additional business. So I think for me, it's been really gratifying to reconnect with people, and to just the inbound business has been so flattering, and it's just like you can't prepare for it, and I think that's when it comes to like underestimating themselves. I think everyone underestimates themselves and overestimates others. Like everyone is intimidated by what else is out there in the world, and without realizing that they themselves are so powerful and impactful. So I think that just seeing the opportunity out there once I'm sort of out of the ESPN bubble has been very, very eye-opening. And then I think,
No, keep going.
Yeah, so that's one. And then, 2 is how, you underestimate yourself, and you also underestimate your worth. And like, the more you go on, the more you realize that you need to be working on business that, not only makes sense because, it's money in your pocket, but it makes sense because it's a partnership. Like when I've had this, I've had this opportunity to have my own business, and I can decide the business that I work on and don't work on. And that's powerful. And like, it's about being empowered and really understanding that like, you are the person here that, can decide what you do as a company. And sometimes you might have one person that thinks you're a total rock star, and another person that thinks you don't know what you're doing and you're a mess. And, I'm not saying that has happened to me where a client said you're a mess, but, sometimes you just have to you just click with certain people, and you just kind of have to run with that.
Man, I love that stuff. It's inspirational. I love the idea too of biz dev, of kind of not flipping it around, but taking that perspective of this person needs help. They value the help that I can give, and this is a mutually beneficial relationship. It's not like a sell. It's a partnership, and it's a super cool perspective.
Yep.
All right, time for our food question, Brendan. I picked New York as a city because I know you spent a lot of time there, but you can choose Bristol, you can choose Miami. But if I come visit you, we hang out. What's the best meal to get, and where are you taking me?
So if it's in Miami, which is where I live now, I'd say that there's probably three meals that really stand out. One, Carbone in Miami is, Carbone's incredible. The food there, the pasta. I was there last weekend. Carbone is one. Two is a sushi place called Uchi, which is fantastic. And then three is another Italian place called Il Gabbiano. So those are in Miami. And I'll just pick one for New York. I know you only asked for one, but in New York, man, if we were in New York, I'd probably just go to Katz's Deli.
Hell yeah, I'm good with that. As with a proud Jew, I'm good with cats.
Have you had Katz's?
I have. Oh yeah, the corned beef.
Oh, I bet. Oh yeah, totally. Steak fries, absolutely.
We are gonna eat good together one of these days, whether it's in Miami, New York, or even out here in SoCal. It's some good meals ahead. Number 9,
Yeah.
Brandon, we might have touched on this in some way, but tell me, who would be at the top of your client wish list for Be Known? Who's someone that you don't work with now that would be at that top of that wish list where I hope I can work with that person someday?
Wow, what a question. Um, hmm.
Take your time.
You
This
know
is a tough
what?
one.
Yeah. I'm kind of stumped. I mean, I think for me, I think the ideal, like if someone, like someone could say, "Oh, I want to work with LeBron James," right, or Tom
Yeah.
Brady, or something
Yeah.
like that. I find more thrill out of working with someone younger in their career and less established,
Mhm.
because then there's a lot of satisfaction to build them and help grow with them from the beginning. So for me, I would say it would have to be someone that's much younger. It would have to be someone that's like I don't know, like a Mikey Williams, who's like a complete
Mhm.
high school superstar that, is already getting 7-figure deals. Mikey Williams is probably not the answer, but I would say it's someone on the smaller side, on the more junior side. So, yeah, you know what? We probably would just, probably for now, I would just say Mikey Williams. But yeah, I feel kind of stumped there, and I don't think that's a great answer. But on principle, it would be someone that's not already very well established that you've heard of. It's
Okay.
probably who I'm looking for is, it might be someone who I haven't heard of. That's the thrill for me. But of course, a LeBron or Tom Brady would be amazing.
So I like that perspective. It's you want to be able to have someone that has enough of a challenge where you get to really test yourself to some degree and realize that growth that they wouldn't be able to do as well without you.
Yep.
All right, last one for you here, Brendan, in our BK briefs. Another tough one though, so get ready. I'm going to ask you to name who is on the Mount Rushmore of UNC men's basketball. The Mount Rushmore, I think it's 4 names. Who are the guys or gals that are on that Mount Rushmore? Or no, men's basketball, so not gals. Men's basketball,
Yeah.
Tar Heels
Men's
Mount
basketball.
Rushmore.
Michael Jordan.
Easy one.
I think Tyler Hansbrough has to be on there.
Psycho T, I like it.
I think I and I didn't watch him, but it's hard. Like James Worthy is probably like in that, and then Vince Carter. There's Phil Ford, who was like, you know Phil Ford?
Yeah, totally.
In my yeah, am I missing anyone else?
It's tough, man. It's tough. Even on the national championship team, you have like your Raymond Feltons and Rashad McCants and those guys as well, and not quite Mount Rushmore-ish, but not bad.
Totally. Yeah, I would say Jordan. Yeah, I would say Jordan Hansborough, Phil Ford, and Vince Carter. And did I miss anyone? Did I totally screw anything up there? Was there anyone omitted?
The only caveat would be if we try to go all the above, including coaches, because then we have like Dean Smith, Roy Williams as well.
Oh, yeah, you have to put. Yeah,
Then it becomes impossible.
Yep.
All right, now I'll give you a passing grade on that one. I like the inclusion.
Thank you.
I like the inclusion of some of the older guys. I think Phil Ford was a must have for sure. So I like
Appreciate that. Yep.
All right, Brendan, kicked ass in your BK briefs. Now your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star to follow. It can be on any platform, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. YouTube. Tell us who they are and why they're following.
The social media all-star to follow is Richard Jefferson on TikTok. And he is so talented, leans into the right features on TikTok, has creeped up on 800,000 followers. He might be like 820. He's a content machine, and highly recommend engaging with him. And no, he's not a client.
I like that one a lot, and I would definitely agree. He pops up in my For You feed quite frequently, and it's always good stuff. That's a great call, and a great just case study of someone who was certainly a great player, not a Hall of Fame player, but a great player who really has become a true superstar across channels in his post playing career. That's a great call out.
Absolutely.
And Brandon, how about you? Where can we find you as well as all things Be Known across digital social?
B Kaminsky for me, BKAMINSKY on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. Of course, is just my name. Be Known is Be Known Agency on Instagram. I think it's Be Known _ on Twitter. But yeah, I mean, Be Known with no E in the middle, and follow us.
Check him out. You can tell from just from listening to him that this guy knows his stuff and then some. Just tremendous being able to talk to you today, Brandon, and really appreciate you giving some of your time and wisdom and insight to the podcast today.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate you having me and appreciate your insights as well.
Here's to a meal at Cat's Deli in the future.
Absolutely.
Cut. Oh, such good stuff, dude. That was easy. It was like talking to a friend. I love those kinds of
interviews. Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. That was a lot of fun. How often are you doing that?
These interviews, this podcast?
Yeah.
They come out bi-weekly. So every other week and every other Tuesday. I actually awesome. One came out this past Tuesday is from an enemy school, but he's still really good. Is this guy who heads creative services and graphic design at Duke. Ken Pearson. So if you like Duke, but you don't, awesome. You can listen to that. But awesome. No, it blows you away, dude. I've been doing this for this August will be 9 years, which is ridiculous to me. Like, I mean, fuck, you were fresh out of college when I started this thing, which makes me feel
oh my god
really old. But no,
and have you been able to get good listeners?
Yeah, like I don't honestly. I wish I tracked my numbers more effectively, but it's podcast analytics are such a pain in the ass because I have to look at like different platforms. I can look at Apple, I can look at Spotify, I can look at Google Play. It's such a pain in the ass. But what kind of really blows me away is when like people either people I don't know or people that are like in high level positions like tell me they listen, which is really cool. Like when a CEO or a VP or something like that. So
that's so cool, man.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I mean shit, like who was it? Someone like came to Greenfly and became a customer at Greenfly. They're like because they knew who I was and like saw that I worked there.
Oh,
like,
my god!
So gratifying.
Give you the credit on that? Did they give you the credit on that?
No, they didn't. But they.
Oh man,
that's a whole other story too. Like when I started at Greenfly, like the head of sales, Peter, at that time, like was trying to get me to basically like open up my quote unquote Rolodex and try to funnel in customers, and I was like, that's not how I use my relationships. And it just didn't feel comfortable.
Totally.
But no, it blows me away that people I get to I even able to have come on the podcast. Like, I mean, shit, even from the ESPN side, I've had some talent on. I had Ryan McGee was a great guest at one point. Who else have I on? Andrew Brandt back when he was ESPN. Couldn't get John Buchkross to come on, but I have had some good conversations with him. I would have loved to have him on, but dude, it's a labor of love. Like, I haven't missed an episode in ever, which is ridiculous. I probably should take time
amazing.
off. But yeah, dude, it allows me to have conversations like this, and an excuse for you and me to connect. And now whether you like it or not, you're in my contacts. You're someone like I'll hit up for forever now. Yeah. So you're in there.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. So kudos to you for doing it all this time, and appreciate you having me, bro.
I appreciate you. Yeah, so this will come out. So the last one came out this past Tuesday, which means next week is an off week. So the following Tuesday is when this will be released to the world, and you will have an influx of hundreds of thousands of inbounds. No,
I can't. It better be no less than that.
but seriously, man, like this is fantastic. It's great to just quote unquote meet you more formally, and always happy. Like I said, if you want any introductions, I can help with. And certainly, if you're ever out in SoCal, LA, or San Diego, whatever, hit me up and lunch on me for sure.
No, appreciate that, bro. Thanks for having me, man, and good to connect.
Hell yeah! Take care. Have a good holiday weekend.
All right, bro.
And keep going strong and be known. You're kicking ass, dude.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
All right, later, Brendan.
All right, bro. Peace.
Bye. Thank you so much again to Brendan Kaminsky, founder of Be Known. Just listen to him talk all day about this industry, about Stephen A. stories, and just cannot thank him enough for coming on the podcast today, and look forward to continuing to follow his career and all the great people that he works with. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on LinkedIn, where I post more content, on Twitter at NJH287. Hit me up at the website, dsmsports.net, for more episodes and content. And, of course, follow the podcast, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, though, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.